Hello, I'm Fred Greco, the senior pastor of Christ Church in Katy, Texas, and I'd like to speak with you for just a few moments about the events related to the coronavirus here as they relate to Christ Church and our worship and activities. The first thing that I want to say, not only to the congregation of Christ Church, but just to anyone who's watching this video, is that now is not the time to fear. It does no good to be afraid and to act irrationally and to be captive to fear. And the reason we're not afraid is not because there's no cause for concern. It's not because we don't want to be prepared. The reason we don't need to be afraid is because we trust the Lord. We know that He is in charge of all things, that He is sovereign, and that He is working out all things for the good of His people. But we will be prepared now for the coronavirus and be taking steps in accordance with advice from health officials such as the CDC to be proactive in limiting the spread of this virus. Now, it's important for us to see that the steps we're taking, just as the steps that other churches or schools or businesses are taking, are not because there are a great number of people in America today dying or in the hospital. We're taking these steps to flatten the curve, as it's been called by health officials. That is to prevent the spread of this disease to many people. One of the unique features of the coronavirus is that someone can have the virus and not show symptoms for up to 2 weeks. And so someone could be walking around feeling perfectly healthy and have contact with many, many people. And so that's why the CDC and other health authorities have sought to limit contact, to have social distancing, to prevent people who believe they're completely healthy from getting in touch and contact with many other people and spreading this disease. And ultimately what we're doing is we're doing this to protect the most vulnerable among us, including those who are elderly and those who have immune system issues. So what will we do at Christ Church? Well, the first thing that we're going to do is we will worship. And that's because worship is the most important aspect of being a believer. It is the chief end of man. And times like this, I think, show us how important worship is. That even in the midst of a time in which literally every sporting event has been canceled, when all of schools are closing down and going to online classes, that it is still important enough to gather together to worship the Lord our God. This has been the history of Christians throughout the centuries during times of plague and times of disaster. They have come together to worship the Lord because that's where we find comfort and encouragement and hope. And so I want to encourage you not to take worship for granted, that when we are past this time, that you realize that worship is something that you need for your spiritual health and for your own benefit. Now, one of the reasons that we can do this is the advisory that's been given by Fort Bend County officials and others in Houston and Harris County is to avoid gatherings of more than 250 people. And so at this current time, each of our worship services is not in excess of that number. We're going to retain both of our worship services at 8:30 and 11 o'clock in the morning and at 6 p.m. because by having multiple services, we disperse the number of people in each service and we make it easier for us to even practice social distancing in the service. But we're also going to make live stream available for all of our services. So if you or a family member are ill or showing symptoms, I want to encourage you not to come to church. Not because we don't want to see you, not because we don't care about you, but because we do. You can show love to your neighbor by avoiding gatherings at this time. And so for the health of those in our congregation and those in our community, we would ask that you use wisdom and common sense because the health of those around us is of a primary concern for us. Now, we will worship, but there will be some change. For example, there will be no nursery during our services. And as you come to worship, you should avoid shaking hands with others or hugging. You should instead smile and wave and give a warm greeting to others around you. You should feel free to make use of the entire area of the space in the sanctuary for social distancing. And so beyond worship, our other activities will be suspended for the month of March. Now that includes our Sunday school, our Bible studies, youth group, our Christ Kids, and our English as a Second Language program. More details can be found about all of these items on our website, www.cckpca.org. Now, it is our prayer that by April, we will have more information about this coronavirus situation, not just here in Katy, but throughout the country, and that the Lord will have spared us any future challenges. We hope that this entire matter will be behind us in a matter of weeks or months. At that point, the session of Christ Church will come together to reassess if we need to take any further measures or if we can go back to our typical schedule. Well, what can you do now in the midst of all of this? Several things. First, and perhaps most importantly, you can pray. This is an opportunity to pray for your family, to pray for those around you, to pray for our nation, to pray for our leaders, to pray for those who are working hard to find solutions to these problems, and to pray that the Lord would deliver us from these difficulties. You can also trust the Lord. Now, these two things are not in competition. We can pray to the Lord, we can cry out to the Lord for deliverance, and yet we can trust in Him that He will provide for us. So we earnestly seek Him out, but we trust that He will deliver. We can also use common sense. Wash your hands. You probably, like me, have seen many videos or memes online about how long you should wash your hands and what song you can sing to keep track of the time and such. But it really is true that the most helpful thing you can do to prevent the spread of really almost any disease is to use good hand washing protocol. I think also we can encourage one another. This is an opportunity, even if you can't visit with someone, to send someone a note or to call them up on the phone or do a video chat and encourage people, especially those whom you know who might be isolated and by themselves. And then you can look for opportunities to minister to others in our community who don't know the Lord. And as a result, they'll be especially fearful and alone. We are blessed by the Lord our God. He brought our congregation and His people through Harvey not that long ago. He will bring us through this. And so I look forward to being with you in worship this coming Lord's Day, whether it's in person or online through the technology that the Lord has provided for us. May the Lord bless you and keep you.